There's often a lot of misconceptions when it comes to League starters. Far too often, people look for a build that does things that a League starter will realistically never need to, like one-shot Sirus. You don't need the damage to one-shot anything on your League starter. What you do need is a build that's reliable. A build that starts working on absolutely nothing, and the ability to scale to do all of the content faced in the beginning of the game. Things like defeating Sirus, defeating Conquerors to get your Watchstones, and maybe defeating a few of the Maven invitations, so that you can get some of the passives at the center of the Atlas. The best League starters can do all of this and more. They scale infinitely, and can become some of the best builds in the game. So, was Fireburst a good League starter? Did it serve me well? And why did I stop gearing it roughly a week and a half ago? I'm going to answer all of these questions, as well as break down some of my gearing choices with the character, as they do vary from what a lot of other people have done. So to answer the first, yes, it was an extremely good League starter. It started working on absolutely nothing as an Armor Brand Ignite. Most of the power was in the gem levels on Armor Brand and the Ascendancy itself. After that, I switched to Fireburst, which required, of course, an Essence-rolled weapon, and the build continued to be really good at clearing. It had some issues on single target, but I ended up solving those as I continued to gear the character by adding in a Cluster Jewel. I ended up going on to defeat Sirus. I ended up going on to defeat the Feared. I did Maven. I killed Delve bosses at a depth of up to 400. By every metric, this build is a very fast mapper. It's a very reliable boss killer. You're not going to one-shot Sirus, but you should be able to survive making a mistake on the fight, as long as you don't AFK in the center of a meteor maze. So overall the build did serve me well. As for why I stopped gearing it about a week and a half ago, well, that has to do mostly with the fact that I was running into a lot of lag issues in PoE. And quite honestly, if I wanted to min-max something right now, it would be a Magic Finder, because Scourge in low-tier maps is absurd with Magic Find. Some of the most money that you will make in Path of Exile right now is just Magic Finding Tier 3 Tower and cooking a bunch of Scourge maps and taking your Magic Find character into those. So if I wasn't going to push Deep Delve, and I wasn't going to push Magic Find, and the game was lagging so much that it was miserable to play, I didn't really see any reason to continue min-maxing the character. I decided to call it done there. When it comes to the build, I'm doing two things that are significantly different from what I've seen a lot of people do. The first is I'm using a staff instead of a bow. Now, the damage on a staff does seem to be a little lower until you make a really good item. However, the advantage of a staff is it's very easy to scale block. That's why I'm using a Thread of Hope, and that's why I'm pathing through Glancing Blows. This is a very good bit of damage smoothing. It's not perfect. If I take a big enough hit, like a direct hit from a Sirus Meteor Maze, I will probably die through the glancing. But in most cases, the added layer of pseudo-avoidance, of damage smoothing if you will, is enough to help me survive even very rippy Scourge encounters. And it's especially effective against bosses. Now to do this, I needed the Elder mod that gives you staff block as a suffix. That's why I'm using a staff instead of a bow. And where I've pushed the gear now, the damage is roughly comparable. The other really big difference is I am using a Brass Dome. This gives you crit immunity, this gives you a ton of armor, and this gives you max res. It's all around an amazing item, and honestly I think it's just better than Kaoms Heart. It also means that I can run an amazing amount of mana reservation. I can run Determination, Anger, Malevolence, Herald of Thunder, and Vitality. And all it means is I needed to spend about 10x on an Enlightened 4, which is money well spent because that Enlightened 4 is an investment I can carry through to every future character. In terms of things I do differently, only one thing really stands out to me. The thing that really stands out to me is something that I would probably do differently is I'm still using an Archdemon Crown, when realistically I should probably have a Blizzard Crown. Now, Stormbrand is really smooth and efficient at hitting stuff, but ultimately that doesn't matter that much of this build. The thing that's doing most of the hits is going to be Herald of Thunder. I just need to get the process started. So something like Arcanist Brand Wave of Conviction Scorch would probably be a far more effective way to deal with my culling, to deal with my scorching, and to deal with my exposure. And if I used a Blizzard Crown, I'd have much higher base damage from my ignites. The only reason I didn't do this is I had already decided to stop investing in the character. But if you want the best possible build, something like an Elder Warlord Blizzard Crown will be your best in slot helmet with the Herald of Thunder enchantment. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video that magic finding low-tier maps is some of the most efficient money that you can make. And because this build is basically an Autobomber, it actually does pretty well at running through maps quickly and getting a lot of kills. It's not so great at wearing the MF gear, but neither are most Autobombers, to be fair. So what I often did to increase my low-tier mapping speed was I swapped my belt for Abyssco's Leash. As long as both have roughly the same amount of cold res and roughly the same amount of strength, this worked really well, and I ended up switching off of needing the strength on my belt anyway, so it was even easier. I did lose a significant portion of my life, about 1,000, but it's a tier 3 map. It doesn't really matter that much. That did significantly increase my speed, as not only did I get a bit of quant, but I also got Rampage from Abyssco's. So now, onto gear and crafting. Well, obviously, you're not going to be crafting the replica Emberwake. You're going to be getting that from Heist, most likely purchasing it. You're also not going to be crafting the Brass Dome. You're going to be finding it as a drop, purchasing it from another player, or if you want something like the Elder Influence, creating it with either Trash to Treasure or a Tainted Mythic Orb. And the same goes with a Blasphemer's Grasp. They drop off of Elder, you corrupt them, and profit. Now, for the ring, I purchased it, because it's just a generic life and res ring. You could probably create something similar with Rog, you could create something similar by chaos spamming, but at this point of the league, it's better to just buy it. The amulet was also something I ended up purchasing, because I needed the res, I wanted some chaos res, and I needed the damage over time multiplier plus non-chaos as extra. If you wanted to create something similar for yourself, and you didn't necessarily need the resistances, the best way to do it would probably be to Awakener Orb together, an Elder Amulet with non-chaos as extra, and a Shaper Amulet with fire damage over time multiplier, or of course, a Hunter Amulet with fire damage over time multiplier. For the helmet, all I really needed from my version was resist and life, so I rolled it with an Essence of Greed. If you wanted a Blizzard Crown and you wanted it to be much better, you'd combine an Elder Helmet with Phys dispels, Fire dispels, really any flat damage dispels. The damage type doesn't matter too much. With a Warlord Helmet with nearby enemies have -9 to Fire Res, because this of course scales your damage very efficiently. For the boots, they didn't actually cost me that much, because I was able to buy both the elevated non-damaging ailment effect and the elevated ignite effect for very cheaply after purchasing an ignite effect plus Tailwind boots, mavening it, failing to get the ignite elevation, and selling that, which basically paid for everything else I did. I then Awakener Orbed them together, did Suffixes Cannot Be Changed, used a Veiled Chaos to get the movement speed as my prefix, and I hit Fire Res, which was pretty helpful. I have a video, which will be in the description below, on how to craft multi-influence mod boots, because you could take these even farther and you could go for elusive if you really wanted to min-max. The Stygian is relatively easy to roll. All you need to do is roll with pristine fossils. Eventually you'll get life % max life. You tend to hit life regen as a suffix. For a lot of people this might be a dead mod. I actually found it quite helpful, as this build doesn't have that much boss life recovery, aside of a life flask and aside of a regen. Then of course the cooldown recovery rate is to help Fireburst clear more efficiently, and to have more chances to proc EO, which I'm still honestly not sure if it is or isn't working with a build, as I took it off multiple times and did some unscientific tests of killing a couple bosses, and it didn't seem to matter that much, but maybe that's just because my damage is so consistent that it honestly doesn't matter. For the staff, unfortunately, there's no efficient way to craft this. You just have to use the essences over and over until you end up hitting it. At least if you want to get the mod for block, because it has no tags. I guess one thing that you could potentially do is you could try to block as many modifiers as possible in the suffixes. You could use glyphic fossils and you could roll it that way, but it's only 1 in 4 to hit the fire burst, and it's probably going to be pretty inefficient and pretty expensive. Now, you don't need the block mod. You can go with almost any fireburst staff, and the damage is kind of negligible, to be honest. But I was min-maxing the character, and I was pushing it, so I did want the block, as it's quite effective. If you want a cheap and easy craft, honestly go with a bow, because a multi-modded bow is probably going to be better than a multi-modded staff. So those are how I crafted some of the items that I'm using. And overall, this build has been really efficient to clear. It's as fast as almost any Autobomber on the market, but it's far less squishy. I have over 5,000 life, and I have a bunch of armor and max res. My weakness is chaos, because I really didn't invest into chaos resistance. The main reason for that is, towards the later days of a build's min-maxing, I was mostly delving, and there isn't that much damage in delve, especially if you're not automatically killing everything around you, which at depth 400 plus, the damage starts to slow down to the point where I could move safely through chaos zombies before my ignites would kill them. The build does really well in Scourge as well. I was often pushing 250 to 300 stacks in both Scourged maps and Scourge in layouts like Tower that are quite efficient. And as for bossing, like I said before, I did Vafird, I did Cortex, I did Sirus, I did Maven, I did Hidden. I think the only invitation I haven't done is the Synth one, and that's just because I didn't end up buying the bosses. Not because the build wouldn't be able to do it if I had them. So if you want something that feels like an Autobomber, but doesn't just die to everything, then this is a great build. If you want the best possible build for Scourge, unfortunately you should probably be playing an MF Deadeye. I'm very happy with this. I'm happy with the choice to League start it, and while I can't say I'd do it again just because I don't like to repeat builds, it certainly did live up to the legacy and the hype surrounding Dan's version from a couple leagues ago. For anyone following along, what have you felt Fireburst has done for you? Do you think it's a build you'd play again? Or do you just never play the same build twice? Thank you for watching. And again, a special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. If you want to support me, you can do so by clicking the links down in the description below or on screen right now. You can also support by making purchases through my Nexus page. Or if you just want to chill and hang out, be sure to join the Discord. Again, links for everything are down in the description below. Thank you, and have a great day.